From the Oklahoman newsroom, this is the Thunder Update. I'm Jenny Carlson here with Thunder beat writer Brett Dawson. Brett, obviously a lot going on in Thunderland, even though the games are over. Exit interviews over the weekend after the Thunder eliminated from the playoffs, and everybody's talking about Carmelo Anthony, what he said. We obviously saw his role diminished. The fact that the Thunder was better without him on the floor in a lot of instances in the playoffs. Now he's talking about he's not coming off the bench. What are the options that exist for the Thunder as it relates to Carmelo Anthony moving forward?
Well, they have some. I mean, the idea that Carmelo is going to opt out of the $27.9 million he's owed, highly unlikely that he would just opt out. I talked to Bobby Marks at ESPN, who's kind of a front office analyst for them, and he said Carmelo can probably get $8 million on the market for next season. That means he could take a little less than that $28 million that he's owed. He won't take the whole thing less. So one of the Thunder's options is they could buy him out at that $28 million number. They could stretch that $28 million number over the course of 3 seasons. Now that's going to count against their cap, and it's going to count against the tax for 3 years. So it's dead money. It's not an ideal situation. Probably the best hope for the Thunder, if it decides that it needs to part ways with Melo, is agree to some kind of buyout, say $20 million of that 28 or so million, and then spread that $20 million over 3 years. Now your hit is a little more than $6 million. You'd save significant money. You'd go from owing him $28 million next year to owing him $6 million the next year. Now you still owe him $6 million for the next 2 years, but that makes a huge dent in your tax, and that frees up some money to do some other things they want to do around here.
What about keeping him and the trickle effects that would have on other free agents and just the salary cap itself? If they kept him, what would that do?
Well, if they keep him and sign Paul George, it restricts a lot of what they can do. It's going to make it very hard to sign Jeremy Grant. If they do, they're going to have maybe the most expensive team in the history of the NBA. Look, the Thunder has planned for the upcoming year. I think they've always thought this was going to be a year they were going to spend, whether it was with Kevin Durant or with some piece that replaced Kevin Durant. But when you lose in the first round of the playoffs and you're talking about a payroll and tax bill combined that's in the upwards of $260 million, as Bobby Marks told me the other day, there's a reasonable expectation for management, or there might be a reasonable expectation for management to say, couldn't we do this by spending a little less? So I think that's a difficult position to put yourself in. The thing with Carmelo, and you've been here longer than I have, and you know this isn't the Thunder way. Yeah. To be out there the way he was, to say I sacrificed this year and I'm done with that. That is not the kind of piece that typically would stay around. There are complicating factors with Carmelo. Does Paul George want to play with him, and does that make him less likely to stay if they decide they're parting ways with Carmelo? Does Russell Westbrook want him around? There's some discussion of that. So there's a whole lot there. Keeping him certainly is an option. It's the easiest option, except that it's going to limit what you can do going forward. And the trick is, the way he reacted at exit interviews to what happened in the playoffs makes you wonder, would he have reacted that way if they had benched him in February or March? And how does that going to work going forward? Are you going to get a fracture in the locker room if he comes back? And are you going to have to treat him with kid gloves and play him in the way that he's comfortable with rather than what's best for the team? It's all very complicated.
Well, and to the very end, I mean, throughout the regular season, we'd heard about what a good influence Carmelo was in the locker room. Very, mature and, had been through so much, and people really respected that in the locker room. Now there's this 180 that it could be the exact opposite. But after listening to what he had to say, I think that fear is real, Brett.
It's founded. I mean, he was great from every indication. I mean, nobody said anything but Carmelo was really great. Russell Westbrook, even at exit interviews, notably he went before Carmelo, but he said, he brings out the Melo in me, which is a great line from Westbrook. That sort of brings out this mellow side of him, relaxes him a little. He could disarm Westbrook in a way very few players can. He has great respect. He's really charming. He's really funny. Players like him everywhere. He is well liked. I think fans have a perception of Carmelo that maybe because of the way he plays and he likes to get his shots that he's not a well-liked guy on teams. That is not the case. Teams really like him. Players really like him. So that would have, I think the question there is what kind of fracture would that have created if they had benched him and he had been upset? Because, the way he treated it the other day makes you think that might not have gone so well. And when you have a guy who's very popular in the locker room, if it comes down to a situation where he's unhappy, now you start to get some splintering, you start to get some side taking. It made it a very difficult situation. It's why we try to tell people during the year it's not as simple as saying you got to play Jeremy Grant a little more and Carmelo Anthony a little less.
All right, an ongoing off-season situation we'll obviously be following, so be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.